Guys, now please confirm to me now. Are you getting my voice on screen now? Guys, now check it. Now check it. Are you getting my voice on screen now? Okay, nothing I discussed, guys. Now again, I'm starting that content. Nothing I've discussed, guys. Just open the documents. Okay, right. Thank you. All right, sir. When we install Tomcat server in our system, first Tomcat 10.1 folder will be created. Inside this Tomcat 10.1 folder, a number of subfolders are available. What are the various subfolders? Bin folder. This bin folder contains batch files or .exe files which are used to start the server, which are used to stop the server. Next one is conf folder. It able to manage configuration details. It able to manage what details there? No, configuration details in the form of some XML files. Already we have seen tomcat-users.xml. Other one is like what there? server.xml file. These files we have seen where server configurations like port numbers or maybe local host related details. No, all the things are existed. Lib jar files. Some jar files we required. These jar files are required to run a Tomcat server. So lib folder contains jar files. Libraries. Work folder contains some duplicate applications to perform some internal work about our applications. Next one is the logs. It is able to manage logs, server logs. Server logs are giving information to us when server was started, when application is deployed, when application is undeployed, when server was shut down. All these details are noted in the form of the log files. They are available in the logs. Temp folder is for the sake of temporary files. Then after that, web apps folder. Web apps folder is for the sake of our application. Web apps folder for the sake of like what their application. Right, for our applications now. Inside this web apps folder, now here we have to create our own folder. Our own folder. This folder in the inside the web apps folder is representing what their application folder. Web apps folder. Inside the web apps folder, our folder is representing what their application folder. For example, 5 applications I want to create. Inside the web apps folder, we can create 5 folders. Each and every folder is representing what their one application. Each and every folder is representing what their one application. Understand it clearly now. Okay, fine. Now, inside the application folder, we are able to create multiple folders, different folders. All folders are user defined folders only. As per our requirement only we can create, but example wise some folders I'm going to create. Try to understand it clearly. Sir, all of you get my point or not? Inside the application folder, maximum folders are user defined folders only. Any name, anything we can use except one folder. I will give that information later on, but first of all let me create some other folders now. Right, sir. Now the very first one, like the first one inside this one is themes folder. Inside the themes folder, we can provide like the files like what there, CSS files or something else like different files. Like here we are able to provide for the sake of like what there, look and feel. Some files we are able to provide there. That themes folder here we are able to create. Apart from the themes folder, there we can create another folder like what there, images folder. Images folder. If we want to maintain any images in our system, in our application, if we want to provide some background images, some logos or background images, if we want to provide there we can use like what there, this particular folder, images folder. There we can use like what there, .gif, .jpg, like this, different files. Any different files here we are able to provide inside the images. Next one is after this, another folder here we are going to create there, These folders are like what there, understand it now, literature. Inside this, some documents here we are able to provide. Doc or maybe .pdf, like these files here we are able to manage. What are these files actually? These files are representing documentation about our applications. If we want to maintain some documents about our applications there we can provide literature, that folder. Again, I'm telling there, these folders are user defined and a standard names I'm giving there. We can change their names, even we can remove them also. Answer my point, what I'm telling to you now. All right, sir. Next one is, apart from this, here we are able to provide SRC folder. Yeah, this is required. This is in general, we are able to use it. SRC folder, there we are able to provide .java files. In our applications, if we want to maintain some Java files there under SRC only, we are going to create our .java files. Next one is, after this, after completion of this, we can provide directly HTML files directly we can provide, or else we can take directly like what there, HTMLs separately folder we can take, there we can provide like what there, .html. Sir, are you getting my point or not? So we can take HTMLs, that means HTML files. We can take there, we can provide .html files also. And another folder here we can take, no, similarly, similar to this HTML files, we can take like what there, JSPs here we are able to take. JSPs like this, there we can provide what there, .jsp files also. Got it or not? Not only that, but one point here I'm telling to you, up to these folders are not mandatory. Directly we can keep all these files under application folder. We can access them also. But in the clear-cut separation point of view, I've written all these folders. Yes, sir, all of you are getting it or not? In the point of clear-cut separation, only I have taken these many folders. But without these folders also, we can keep directly all these files under the application folder. But SRC is required. If we want to keep .java files, no, we should not provide directly .java under application folder. We have to take what there, SRC only. Inside this SRC only, we have to keep that what there, .java files. Remember this. Okay, finally, these are the various folders here we are able to manage. Apart from all these folders, one folder is mandatory, is required. This folder is called web-inf folder. Name must be provided in uppercase letter. In between web and inf, hyphen is mandatory. Its name is mandatory. In this way only we have to provide web-inf folder. Right or not? Web-inf folder is representing web information, web application information. Okay, right. Inside this web-inf folder, what folders here we are able to have? Inside the web-inf folder, we are able to take one important folder, that is what there, lib folder. Inside the web-inf folder, one important folder here we are going to take, that folder is what there, lib folder. Inside the lib folder, we are going to have .jar files. Inside the lib folder, we are able to have what files now? .jar files. Okay, fine. Now it is completed. After completion of this, inside the web-inf folder, one file, not a folder, one file, we can provide that file. That file is like what there, web.xml file. One file here we are able to provide, that file is like what there, web.xml file. That is the meaning. What is the meaning of this web.xml file? I'll discuss with you clearly. Not to worry for it. Web.xml file is existed clearly. All right, sir. Now understand it clearly. This is called as deployment descriptor. Web.xml file is also be called as what there, deployment descriptor. Fine. Along with these folders, we are going to take one more folder. This folder is mandatory for us. That folder is classes folder. This folder is what there? Classes folder. Inside this classes folder, we are going to maintain dot class files. Inside the classes folder, we are able to maintain like what there? Dot class files. Understand, all of you know, servlet is a Java program or not? That must be provided in a dot Java file or not? Servlet is a class. Simply speaking, servlet is what there? A Java class. Okay, if it is a Java class now, if we compile that Java class, automatically what files here we are able to get now? If we compile a Java file, what files here we are able to get? Data class files here we are able to get. Got it or not? In our web application directory structure, where we are going to keep all the dot class files now? In web application directory structure, where we are able to keep all the dot class files now? Under classes folder. Under the classes folder only, all the dot class files are going to be provided. Right, so now this is exactly the overall directory structure for our web application. Right, so now here in this total directory structure, what we have to understand there, observe carefully, up to web apps, black color, up to web apps, provided by Tomcat server by default. Up to web apps, provided by Tomcat server by default. Inside the web apps, application folder onwards, everything we have to create. Sir, all of you are getting my point or not? Right from what there, application folder onwards, we have to create everything. But if we use IDEs, Eclipse IDE or IntelliJ IDE, if we use IDEs now, in IDEs when we are creating project, previously you created Java project, am I right or not? In place of that, if we select a dynamic web project, if we create dynamic web project, automatically web application directory structure will be created by IDE about our application. In the case of IDE, we are not going to create this total structure. There we are going to select only dynamic web project. If we select only dynamic web project, automatically IDE will create our required web application directory structure. Yes, sir. Are you getting it or not? That IDEs part we will discuss separately. Well, let me complete this total environment. Once if you are getting clarity about the total environment, then we are going to talk about what there IDE, how to create web application in IDE. Later on I will show that. First of all, understand the difficult approach. Once you understand the difficult approach, then after that we will go for what there simplified approach. IDE is providing simplified approach, nothing else. It's a matter of 1 minute to complete servlet application in IDE. But we have to understand that everything in the ground. After that, we'll go for what there, that ID is there. All right, sir. Now this is about like what there, the total web application directory structure. Okay, this is a total web application directory structure. Okay, fine. All of you observe carefully. I given this entire directory structure. Okay, listen carefully. I want to divide this total web application directory structure into two parts. I want to divide this entire web application directory structure in two parts. Again and again I'm telling there, now onwards, web application directory structure in the sense, we have to think right from what their application folder. You have to think right from what their application folder. Right, sir. This entire web application directory structure, I want to divide it into two parts. What are the two parts of this web application directory structure? What exactly the two parts of this web application directory structure? Because of that reason, I given two colors, a red color and a blue color. All right, sir. Now the two parts are like what there. First one is client area or public area. Client area or public area. Second one is private area or server area. Right, sir. Two parts are available here. Public area, red color part is a public area. Blue color part is a private area. Public area is also be called as a client area. Private area is also be called as what there server area. Then what is the difference between these two locations also, these two areas also? Right, sir. Difference is very clear. Observe carefully. Public area, the name itself is giving more clarity. For example, I have a public park. There is a park, public park. The doors are always open. Without taking any permission, without having any permissions or conditions, we can go there, we can sit. Everybody can use that public park. Am I right or not? Listen carefully. But I have a private garden at my house. Answer my point here. I have a private garden at my house. Just in front of my house, maybe some private garden is there. Is it possible for anybody else to come and sit inside my private park? No. Private garden? No, nobody will come. But if anybody else wants to come inside my private park, private garden, if they want to see the flowers and all inside my private garden, what they have to do? They have to take permission from me, right? Am I right or not? They have to come to me, they have to ask permission. If I agree, then only they will come inside, like what there? Inside the my private garden. Sir, got it or not? Same scenario is available in this public area and private area. Public area is accessible to any client. Any client can access public area. But clients cannot access the resources from private area easily. Clients can access the public area resources easily. Every client can access the resources directly from public area. But nobody will access directly the resources from what their private area. Private area is a more restricted area. Their server permission is required. Direct accessibility is not available. Server permission is required. Don't think about it. Server permission in the sense, again, maybe some getting some login page where we have to enter our Gmail ID. And no, not like that. I'll give that. What is the meaning of permission? What is the meaning of it? I will talk about it later on. But time being, we have to understand private area is a restricted area. Server area is what there? Restricted area. Here, application sensitive data is available. But in the public area, open data is available. Think of it. Only one point I'm telling there. HTML files are available under public area. Everybody can access it. Login form.html I'm going to prepare. I will make it is available for everybody. Everybody will access that login form.html. If they're accessing login form.html, what is going to be happen with me? What is there inside the login form.html? They have to enter username and password. That is mandatory for everybody or not? That is required for everybody or not? If they want to access my resource, no. So such type of components I'm going to keep in what their public area. Then every client, every customer can access that public area resource now. Understand my point, Keno? Okay, after getting login form, they have to enter username and password and they have to submit that request. Now that request will come to the servlet, login servlet, where it is available inside the private area. Now, while accessing this login servlet, server will give some specific accessible points there. Through that accessible points only, that request has to come. That request has to access our private area resources. But how server is providing that conditions, we are going to understand that clearly. Yes, sir. All of you get my point or not? Through the login form only, user can access this one. I get my point or not? But anybody else can access what their login form.html. But login servlet will be accessed by whom? User, if they want to access login servlet, no, they have to access that through the login form only. Directly it is not possible. But directly they can access what their login page. Understand the difference here, what I'm telling you now. So whatever it may be, in the web application directory structure, public area, private area. Public area is open for every client. Private area is a somewhat restricted area, not easy to access the resources from the private area. But how to access the resources from private area, I'll give that information to you later on. Okay, fine. Now these are the points here we have to understand. Now let me give the details here. All right, so directory, web application directory structure here we provided. Observe carefully. In the web application directory structure, all right, so now in the above web application or directory structure, there are two parts. There are two parts. What are the two parts here? First one is Right, sir. First one is public area or client area. Public area or client area. Okay. And the second one is what there? Private area or server area. Right, sir. Now we have to understand both the content here. Now observe carefully. What is this public area? Here, what we are able to get the content here. Observe carefully. Right, sir. It is able to manage the resources. It is able to manage the resources which are accessed by the clients directly with their names, with the resources names. With the resources names. Example I am telling to you, observe carefully. Listen, all of you listen carefully. It's able to manage the resources which are accessed by the clients directly with the resources names. For example, if we keep login form.html under public area under application folder, if we keep login form.html under application folder, then we are able to access that login form.html by using its name directly. So I'm going to give one example here. Try to understand this URL here. How I'm going to provide this URL? HTTP :/. That's it. Just give a minute of time. Right, sir. Now understand it clearly. HTTP :/. localhost colon 1010 slash login app slash login form dot html. Right, sir. Now here, what is the resource name I specified here? Now tell me. Login form dot html. What I said to you previously, if we keep login form dot html under the application folder, then we are able to access that login form dot html by using its name directly. Right or not? This is point number one. Next one is private area. The same points here we are able to provide. Try to understand it clearly. Under this private area, right, sir. What's the point here I provided here? It's able to manage the resources which are not accessed by the clients, directly with the resources names. Directly with what their resources names. With the resources names. Okay, understand it clearly. Here, to access the private area resources, we have to define alias names in a deployment descriptor. We have to define alias names in a deployment descriptor. With the alias names only, we are able to access private area resources. Right, sir. Observe carefully. With the alias names only, we are able to access the private area resources. That's it. Now that's the point here we have to understand clearly. Right, sir. Example I'm telling here. If we keep login servlet, under the classes folder, then we are able to access that login servlet by defining alias name in web.xml file. Web.xml file is what there is a deployment description. Web.xml file is what there deployment description. So now here what we have to do there, login servlet by defining the alias name login in the web.xml file. Now in the URL here what we are able to know, in place of this login form.html, now here we have to use what there login. If we use this login, automatically it is not like what there any resource, public area resource. No, see, observe this clearly. What is this login actually? Is it representing any resource name? If you have any HTML or maybe something or some extension, no, then we can understand it now. Just it is an alias name. When this request is coming to the server, server will go to the deployment descriptor. Inside the deployment descriptor for this name, what servlet is mapped, it will identify that servlet, then it will execute that respective servlet. If you get my point or not? So here this is totally an indirect process or not? That means with the server control only the servlet is going to be executed or not? That private area resources are going to be executed under the control of the server or not? Right, because of that reason here we have to provide this particular, we have to define this alias names in the web.xml file. That web.xml file is nothing but what there deployment descriptor. Okay, now observe carefully. If we keep login servlet under classes folder, then we are able to access that login servlet by defining the alias name login in web.xml file. Right, sir. Now here I'm telling you. Here we are able to access the servlet by using the alias name only. By using what there alias name only. That's it. Right, sir. Now this part is completed. Now this is about totally web application directory structure. Leave this punch here. After completion of this web application directory structure, what is that next part here? Now tell me what we have to understand. The next one, prepare deployment descriptor. Prepare what there deployment descriptor. All right, sir. Prepare deployment descriptor. Clear. All of you observe carefully. First of all, what is this deployment descriptor? What is the meaning of deployment descriptor? Deployment descriptor is web.xml file. Sir, what is this deployment descriptor? It is what there web.xml file. Sir, all of you are following or not? Deployment descriptor is what there web.xml file. What it is providing there? What it is providing? Observe carefully. It will provide some description. This description is also be called as metadata. It will provide some description or metadata about the web application, which is required by the container, in order to find and execute the server side resources. Right, sir. Everybody understand my point clearly? What is a deployment descriptor? I'm giving the definition. I've given the definition. Try to understand the definition here. What is the definition here? Deployment descriptor is what? Web.xml file. It will provide some description or metadata about the web application which is required by the container in order to find and execute the server side resources. Understand it clearly what I'm telling you now. Deployment descriptor is what there web.xml file in the directory structure where it is available under web.inf folder. Web.xml file is available. It is providing some details about our application which are required by the container. Who is that container? Actually we know already. When we install the server, main server and container, two parts are available. Who is the executor of our web resources? No, main server or container? Container is responsible to execute our what there server side components. Am I right or not? Servlet container is for servlet execution. JSP container is for what there? JSP's execution. So container, if container wants to execute any resource, but container must require some details or not? What details that container is required? For example, servlet container wants to execute servlet class. What servlet class it has to execute? Are you getting my point or not? What servlet class? Okay, lifecycle is a secondary, but first of all, it has to identify a particular servlet class or not. In web application, 10 servlet classes I have written. What servlet class we want to execute? That servlet class name and their details are provided by web.xml file. Web.xml file is providing mapping between incoming URL, incoming request and the respective servlet class. If a request is coming with the name login, container has to identify the login servlet with respect to the login. Container has to execute login servlet. By the execution of the login servlet only, authentication is going to be performed. I get my point or not? So here what is required? Mapping is required between login and login servlet or not? That mapping details are provided by what there? Web.xml file. That's why here I'm giving the information to you. Try to understand it clearly. Deployment to descriptor is a web.xml file. It will provide some description or metadata about the web application which is required by the container in order to find and execute the server side resources. Observe carefully. Right, sir. Then what exactly the responsibilities of the deployment to descriptor in web applications? What exactly the roles and responsibilities of the deployment descriptor? In web applications, deployment to descriptor is able to provide the following details. Or else maybe deployment descriptor is responsible for the following configuration details. Deployment descriptor is responsible for the following configuration details. In web applications, deployment descriptor is responsible for the following configuration details. I'm going to use so many configuration details. Now just let me list out all the details first of all. Immediately, I'm not going to discuss all of them. Just I want to list out all of them here, majority of them. But throughout our servlet, we are going to discuss about these configuration details only. But let me list out all the content here. First of all, welcome files configuration. Welcome files configurations. Okay. First one is what there? Welcome files configuration. Next one is after this display names configuration. After completion of display name configurations, welcome files already we completed here. Display names are okay, fine. Next one is servlets configurations. Next one is filters configurations. Okay, filters configurations. After this filters configurations, all right, sir. Next one is listeners configurations. After this session timeout configurations. Session timeout configurations. After the session timeout configurations, initialization parameters configurations, context parameters configuration. After this tag libraries configurations. After this JSP files configurations. After completion of this security configurations. Right, so after this security configurations and so on, so many things are available. These are okay, fine, sufficient. Like this, more and more number of configuration details are available. Nearly 30 or 35 types of configuration details are available. But some of them I have written here, but these are going to be discussed throughout our servlets. All these things are going to be discussed in the servlets here. All right, sir, that's okay, fine. After completion of this content, now in our web application, if I want to start my first servlet application, what configuration details here we require? Now first we have to go with what their servlet configuration details here we required. Yes, sir. Got my point or not? Okay, now again I'm telling to you what exactly the requirement of the servlet's configurations in web.xml file. I need to ask that questions once again. Try to understand it clearly. Fine. Now first of all, tell me servlet is a Java class or not? Just now given information there. Servlet is what there? It is a Java class. If it is a Java class now, where we have to keep this Java class in web application directory structure? Where we have to keep that servlet class in web application directory structure? Understand it now? Under web apps only, in which location we have to keep that src folder in general? That is a .java file only. But I'm not thinking about .java file. I'm thinking about what there? .class file. .class file. Where we are going to keep the .class files? No. Come on. Where we are keeping the .class files? No. Under classes folder. Classes folder is come under what? Private area or public area? Private area. So if we keep any resource under private area, and if we want to access that resource, then we have to define some alias name for this particular resource. Through that alias name only we are able to allow to access that resource. Am I right or not? Now we have to define one alias name for the servlet class or not? To define alias name for the servlet class, to provide servlet configuration details in our web application, we have to use servlet configurations in web.xml file. Understand my point or not? We have to use servlet configurations in web.xml file. That's the requirement of servlet configurations in web.xml file. Sir, got it or not? All right, sir. Now understand this clearly. Servlet configurations in web.xml file. All right, sir. This is a point here. In general, in web applications, we will provide, all of you observe carefully, in general, in web applications, we will provide servlet classes under classes folder. Under what there? Classes folder. That is private area. That is private area. If we want to access servlets, then we have to define alias name or locator. Different names are same. All the names are different names, but they're same. Locator or URL pattern in a web.xml file. Right, sir. Answer my point clearly. If you want to access servlets, then we have to define alias name or locator or URL pattern in web.xml file. All right, sir. To define alias names or URL patterns or locators to the servlet classes, we have to use servlet configuration in web.xml file. That's it. That's the requirement to go for servlet configuration in web.xml file. Okay, fine. But how we are able to provide servlet configuration in web.xml file now? Right. To provide servlet configuration in web.xml file, we have to use the following XML tags. We have to use what there? The following XML tags. What tags here we have to use there? Understand it clearly. Web app. These are the XML tags. Now try to understand it now. In XML, remember some rules and regulations. Mainly one rule here we have to follow. For every open tag, there must be a closed tag at the equivalent level. At the respective levels wise, we are going to provide tags in XML, similar to HTML only. But in the case of HTML, some tags are having ending tags, some other tags are not having ending tags, closed tags. Understand my point now? Some tags we can open, that's it, but still they're working. But in XML, every open tag must have an equivalent closed tag. So web app. This web app tag is representing web application. This web app tag is representing what there? Web application. This web app tag is able to provide some description about our web application. Sir, are you getting it or not? Okay, fine. Now inside this, we are going to use two tags. What are the two tags here we are able to provide there? Servlet tag. Then another one is what there? Servlet mapping tag. Another one is what there? Servlet mapping tag. Right, sir. Like this here, we are providing two tags. Servlet tag is representing the details about a particular servlet, but servlet mapping tag is providing the mapping details of the servlet class. Servlet tag is providing servlet class information. Servlet mapping tag is providing mapping details of the respective servlet class. Now let's understand this clearly. Inside this servlet tag, we are going to use servlet name. Tag name is what there? Servlet name. There we can provide logical name of the servlet. Servlet name tag will provide what there? Logical name of the servlet. Next one is what there? Servlet class. Servlet class is what there? Fully qualified name of the servlet class. Fully qualified name of the servlet class. Observe carefully. Fully qualified name of servlet class. Fine. Apart from these two, no, we can provide some other tags also. They're available. We can understand it clearly. Next one is inside this servlet mapping tag, as it is servlet name tag we are going to write. Servlet name tag we are going to write as it is. Now here another tag here we are able to provide URL pattern / pattern name here we have to use /URL pattern. Understand it clearly? Pattern name / what next one? URL pattern. That's it. That's it. Now this is totally like what their web.xml file configurations. In web.xml file, what tags here we are going to use? The related information here we are providing. Try to understand it clearly. Web app, servlet. Inside the servlet, what next one here? No, right sir. Servlet name, servlet class. Next one is what there? Servlet mapping, servlet name, URL pattern. That's it. These are the various tags here we are able to use clearly. Yes, sir. All of you are getting it or not? Right, sir. Now, about each and every tag here, we have to understand. Well, first of all, I want to give one example for it. Then after that, we are able to understand the content. Each and every tag I want to talk now. But first of all, let me go for an example. Now, observe carefully. Now, the same, I want to copy and paste. There, I want to provide the values directly. Right, sir. First of all, logical name. Here, I want to take like what there? Login servlet, like this. Fully qualified name of the servlets. Here, I want to take com.dss.servlets.login servlet. com.dss.servlets.login servlet. Same logical name here we have to use. Then URL pattern here we can use like what there? Login. That's it. Now this is an example. Okay. What is alias name here? What is URL pattern? What is servlet class name? How the mapping is going to be happen? All the points. Now I'm going to discuss with you clearly. Now, first of all, understand it. Later on, see, I need to take the each and every tag information. Nothing. Already we understood the points here. Now, the same point I have to repeat here. So, servlet name will take logical name. Servlet class will take what there? Fully qualified name of the servlet class. Servlet mapping is able to provide. Servlet name is what there? Logical name. URL pattern is what there? Alias name. Or maybe URL pattern name. Alias name or pattern name or locator. Anything here we are able to use. Okay, fine. In this example now, how mapping is going to be performed. Observe carefully. As per the above servlet configuration in web.xml file, as per the above servlet configuration in web.xml file, we are able to access the servlet class by using the following URL. That's it. What exactly that URL here we have to use there? http:// localhost colon. Alright, sir. Now here 1010 slash login app. Application name is login app slash my resource name is what there login. Please check that URL. Yes, sir. If you're getting it or not, check this URL. http:// localhost colon 1010. Next what? Next one here no. Alright, sir. 1010 login app login. I think we have to close this. Haven't closed it. Okay. Servlet? Yeah, I think so. Maybe I forgot it. Mandatory. For every open tag, we have to close. We must provide closing tag. Mandatory. Alright, now observe carefully. http:// localhost colon 1010 slash login app slash login. Right. This is a URL we are providing from client. When this URL is reached to the server machine, what container will do? Listen carefully. Container will come inside the application by taking this application name. Container will take the resource name. Container will take the resource name. Now container understand that, okay, main server, for example, first main server. And request is coming. Who is active now? Main server. First main server will take application name is okay. Resource name. What is that resource name? No login. Main server is checking whether it is any static resource or not. Static resource in the sense maybe .html file, but it is not static resource. This is what there some name. That name is for some other resource. It may be some dynamic resource. Immediately main server will forward that request to the container. Now container will take this resource name. What container will do now? Container will understand login. It is not like any .jsp. It is not like any other extension. Simply a name. A name in the sense definitely it is mapped with some other resource in our web application. To which resource this mapping is available? This login is mapped. To which resource this login is mapped? That container has to know that. Are you able to follow my point or not? When this request is coming to the main server is taking the resource name. Now it is checking whether this request is coming for static resource or dynamic resource. If it is a static resource, no, it will identify that HTML extension, but no HTML extension here. So what is the meaning of it? No, then immediately it will understand that it's not like what there, not for static resource. Then definitely it is for what there, some other. Then immediately it will forward request to the container. Now what container is able to do? No, container will take this name, container will identify, container will think of it. This is the name which is coming from the client for a particular resource which is available at server machine. To which resource this name is coming, for which resource this name is identified, this name is provided. To know that mapping details of this login with a particular resource, container must go to the web.xml file. In web.xml file, what container will do? Container is as already this name. Am I right or not? Now first container will go to the servlet mapping text continuously, right from starting point of this web.xml file to ending point of the web.xml file. It will go to the servlet mapping where it will search for like what there where it will search for what there URL pattern tags. Now for example 10 servlets are available. In 10 servlets are available. In all 10 servlets, no URL pattern tag value must be different, must be unique. So here definitely one servlet mapping tag must have what their login is an URL pattern. If any servlet mapping tag has URL pattern tag which is value is login, immediately container will take its servlet name value from the servlet mapping tag. What is the servlet name value? Login servlet. When it is taking this login servlet here from the servlet mapping, now it will go to the servlet tags, where inside the servlet tags, for any servlet name tag, login servlet is there or not, it will check at each and every servlet tag now. If any servlet tag contains servlet name tag which has the same login servlet, there container will pick the servlet class name from the servlet class tag. When it identifies the servlet class tag now, container will execute that servlet class by following the lifecycle activities, by following the lifecycle actions. Are you following my point or not? So this is a way of mapping, identifying servlet class by the container on the basis of the URL pattern. Yes, sir. Come again. What's the point here I'm telling to you? First, when we submit this request from client to the server, first of all, main server will take this request. Main server is thinking about it. It's a request coming for a particular dynamic resource, not for a static resource. Immediately, main server will forward that request to the container. Now, what container will do? Container will take this resource name. Container wants to know, container must know for which resource this like login is mapped. To know the details, container must go for what their web.xml file. In web.xml file, directly it will not go to the servlet tag. Directly it will go to the servlet mapping tags. In servlet mapping tags, every servlet mapping tag, it will check what tag there, URL pattern. In that URL pattern, if login is identified, immediately it will take the servlet name tag. That is what their login servlet. Now container will go to one by one all the servlet tags. Inside the servlet tags, what tag is available? Servlet name tag is available, where login servlet is identified. For example, if login servlet is identified in any servlet tag, no, there immediately it will pick the servlet class tag value. What is the servlet class tag value here? Come on, what is the servlet class tag here? Is a fully qualified name of the servlet class. Now container is identifying the servlet class name or not? When container is identifying the servlet class name, automatically container will execute the respective servlet class by following its life cycle. This is the way of identifying servlet class through the URL pattern which is submitted by the client. Yes, sir, got it or not? Why this much of indirect approach? No, servlets are stored under private area. Servlets are provided under what their private area. Because of this reason, this much of indirect approach is required. Through web.xml file only, we are able to identify the respective servlet class, and we are able to execute the respective servlet class. Sir, all of you are following or not? So because of this reason, I said to you a number of times, these classes are very, very important. The complete internals I am going to discuss there. If you understand these internal concepts, next servlets development is very simple. Development of an application is nothing if you know all these concepts now. But here itself we have to understand the points. See, at each and every step I am giving some internals. All these are individual internals. When I complete first servlet application, it may be hello world. There I will discuss about that flow of execution. There I am going to combine all these flow of executions at a time. In a single place, I am going to combine all these flow of executions. But now I'm discussing one by one all the individual concepts. In the first application, when I complete first application, total flow of execution at a time I'm going to provide. Then I'm going to combine all these flow of executions. So if you want to understand the overall flow, first you have to understand that each and every individual content. Yes, sir. All of you are getting my point or not? Okay. Now tell me what is the flow of execution. Finally, I'm asking to you. When request is coming from client to the server with this particular URL, what is the job of the main server? Main server will check that URL, will take the resource name, it will check whether request is coming for static resource or dynamic resource. Now if it is .html or something else, no, it will identify static resource, then it will handle it. But it is not for static resource, this is coming for what their dynamic resource. Then immediately main server will forward that request to what? Container. Now what container will do? Container will check, will take the resource name. What is that resource name? Login. Even it is not login.jsp, this is a login. Now container is thinking this login is an alias name maybe for some resource. That resource is available in our web application. To which resource this alias name login is available. Container has to know that. To find that information, container must go for which file? Container must go for which file? Web.xml file, deployment descriptor. There only mapping details are available. Now container will go to what file here? Web.xml file. Inside the web.xml file, what container is able to do? Container first it will go to what tag there? Servlet mapping tags, right from starting point to ending point. In any servlet mapping tag, in any URL pattern tag, if login is identified, container can understand this is a servlet mapping tag, right mapping tag, there servlet details we can identify. Immediately it will pick what value? Servlet name tag. Now container will go to each and every servlet tag where it will search for servlet name tag value. If any servlet name tag is providing login servlet, the same login servlet, immediately container will pick what there? Servlet class name from the servlet class tag. Now understand this clearly. Here login servlet. Now this servlet name tag value, the same servlet name tag value we provided for the sake of providing mapping between URL pattern and the respective servlet class or not. On the base of this mapping only servlet class is identified. When container identifies the servlet class name, immediately container will execute the respective servlet class by following its lifecycle activities. Through that container is able to execute our servlet class. Yes, sir. Are you following or not? Okay. So try to remember these points here. Tomorrow I will give the document for this total process. After that, I'll move forward. In web.xml file, 2 more points I have to discuss there. Once we completed 2 more points now, then we will start to prepare servlet classes. How to prepare servlet classes? How to prepare? What libraries we are going to use to prepare the servlet classes? We are going to understand. Once if we complete the servlet classes development, directly we'll move on to the application. Directly we'll start application. How to prepare first application I'll show clearly. Okay. So again and again I'm telling there. Next 1 week of classes, very important. Don't miss that 1 week of classes. Must attend this 1 week of classes there without failure. Once you understand the first application development clearly, one time if we practice first application in our laptops, same process we are going to use entire servlets. So we will not get any problem. So without failure, try to attend for these classes. Right, sir. That's all for today. We'll meet on tomorrow. Tomorrow is the remaining point. Thank you. So login APP will come there automatically, Agarwal. Don't worry for it. Why? Because yeah, there we provided like what the application name. That login APP is an application name that's going to be available in the web application under the deployment spot. In the deployed applications, we can see that login APP. So there we can identify it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot.